I'm continuing my series of Mass Retro reviews with Season 2, Episode 9, Deal That 3. So this is the third time we get Hawkeye writing back to his father, describing what's going on in the camp, and this time he's explaining the mundane, the stuff they're doing with the boat. So, in fact, there's some pretty fun stuff going on, like, parties, volleyball games in the background, home movies. Yeah, Henry gets some home movies of his daughter's birthday party, and it ends with them holding up signs saying that they miss him. So sweet, and Hawkeye literally says, "If you don't get the order to cry, Henry, I will." And then it goes into more of a joke, but Henry, back home before he was shipped out, just messing around, showing off, having fun with their neighbors, clearly acting, but clearly they're all in on it. Like some just good, wholesome stuff that people who are friends associate with. Of course, there's other stuff going on. Trapper and Henry playing a card game because they're so bored. Which, by the way, Trapper wins and claims he cheated, and that's the only way he could win. Which Frank was insulted by that, but Frank, you should have taken it the other way. Obviously, Trapper was messing with you, but still, you should have taken it the other way. But why would Frank think that? There's no more on the darker element, but having to remove a unexploded grenade from a soldier. Just a bunch of stuff that they do commonly going on. And then there's the overarching vignette story part. There's also the monthly staff meeting, which apparently they haven't had in 6 months, and the last time it did go on, only Radar attended. And apparently, in the last meeting, they tried to vote on holding an annual meeting, annual reunion afterwards. And did anyone vote for it? No. So that means the person who proposed it didn't vote for it. We also learned Frank's middle name is Marion, which Trapper and Hawkeye make fun of him for. And really that scene is just them goofing off, really. But Hawkeye does get this one line that if they're talking about things related to surgery, he'll take it seriously. He just won't take the military seriously. And then there's even a joke in there that General Eisenhower is running for president, and Hawkeye said in his letter, some people do anything to get out of the army. So those jokes are, but there is one element that's overarching these jokes, weaving through them. Not necessarily supporting the jokes, but providing an overarching narrative in addition to Hawkeye's letter back to his father. I'm dropping a voiceover here because I didn't like how I originally recorded the second half of my video, so I scrapped it. I'm doing voiceover just to make it easier on me, so some no time. Anyhow, so what I was going to talk about is still what I'm going to talk about, but I hope I'm going to phrase it better in a way I personally like and feel more comfortable putting out. If you want to see my original version, let me know. I might put it out for channel members. We have to wait and see. But anyhow, so what I was going to talk about the plotline with Sergeant Corden. So Sergeant Corden, he's a wounded soldier. He comes in, Hawkeye and Nurse Ginger are operating on him, and it's time to close, so Hawkeye asks Nurse Ginger to get some more blood for the sergeant, and after Nurse Ginger walks away, Hawkeye is told by the sergeant not to give him the wrong blood, i.e. blood from African Americans. Now, the sergeant uses a racial slur. I'm not going to repeat it because I do not want to repeat any slurs. Even though it's not what's considered the most offensive one, all racial slurs are still offensive. But the fact that he used even a soft slur, and I'm putting that in air quotes, does show that this sergeant is racist. And he doesn't want to give the wrong blood because of his racist mentality. Anyhow, Hawkeye tells Trapper this, and they hatch a plot to basically teach the sergeant a lesson, I believe as Trapper says, some reverse prejudice. So they get a solution to darken his skin, so yes, they do use some blackface in this episode. I don't know quite how I feel about it, but they're using it to target racists, not to target victims of racism, so slightly better, I guess. I don't know. If you feel more comfortable sharing, let me know what you saw, because I felt uncomfortable, but I did like that they were not making fun of Black Americans as is traditionally done with blackface. And I do want to mention, during this, Nurse Ginger and Klinger are also in on Hawkeye and Trapper's plot. Klinger purposely plays into the sergeant's fears to make him convinced he got the wrong blood that would turn his skin darker. Not a thing at all, but in the sergeant's racism, which is inherently illogical, he believes it. And then, of course, Nurse Ginger, who, mind you, is black, that is kind of important, congratulates him on being marked down as white, i.e. to say that he's passing. If you don't know, that term basically refers to an African American, or really anyone of any racial group or societal group in some form, who's able to pass as a member of a dominant group in order to avoid racial prejudice and other forms of discrimination. And the point being is trying to get a sergeant to realize he's in the wrong for his opinions. Granted, he freaks out and all that, and this Ginger, who's also a lieutenant, so Lieutenant Ginger, shuts him down, pulling rank. This is going to be important later on. There comes another scene where Hawkeye brings in the sergeant's meal. Now, this is a stereotypical meal. Stereotypes are always harmful. Even the so-called positive stereotypes still are harmful, especially if you don't live up to a positive stereotype. Stereotypes harmful no matter whether they appear positive or negative. But anyhow, that stereotypical meal, chicken and watermelon, has and was, and probably still is, and depending on the group, associated with black Americans. Now, the reason why they did this is they wanted to provoke the sergeant to realize the racial stereotyping and prejudice that he had. And then they tell him a story of Dr. Drew. I forget his first name, but this doctor was important in developing procedures and all that for blood transfusions and separating the blood from the plasma. Very important stuff. The story, as Hawkeye tells the sergeant, is that the doctor got in an accident and wouldn't be let in the hospital and died of his injuries, and he wasn't let in because it was a whites-only hospital. So, literally telling him that you're only alive because of the work this doctor did, and this doctor died because of racial discrimination. The Dr. Drew was African American. Now, I do want to address something. This story has been shown to be false. While it was a whites hospital he was sent to, by all accounts from the fellow doctor who was in the vehicle with him, he got his treatment. Now, MASH did not know this when they were writing this episode. This story, the doctor relayed it in the 80s, I believe. I did want to just throw that in there, but even if MASH had known the truth, one, the truth wouldn't have been known when the show was set, and two, that would have defeated the purpose of why Hawkeye and Trapper were telling Sergeant Colden that story. They wanted him to get to think on how negative and how harmful racial prejudice and discrimination can be. And the episode ends with Sergeant Colden entering the swamp during a social event and carrying his rifle. So we're wondering, is he going to lash out? No. He goes up to Hawkeye and thanks him both for patching him up, but also for giving him some stuff to think about. Then he goes to address Lieutenant Ginger, also thanks her and renders her a proper salute while addressing her by her rank. It's showing that at the very least, he's gained some respect for people of a different race than him, at least for the positions they held and honor they are due. Hopefully that will extend beyond, so hopefully he'll treat a private who happens to be African American with the same respect that he showed Lieutenant Ginger, but it's a step in the right direction for a guy who had racial prejudice. I'm going to take a cue from Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the song One Foot in Front of the Other, where Kris Kringle tells the Winter Warlock being good is as easy as taking your first step, i.e. you just got to start somewhere and go from there. So, this is actually a really important message for MASH to show. It's showing not only that racial prejudice is bad, saying it's no, don't do that, but it's also showing that sometimes you got to get people to see from a different perspective for them to begin the process of change. In later seasons of MASH, they'll address this plot in different ways, the idea of dealing with a racist character, but this is one of the few times where I believe they legitimately helped the character become a better person by the end of the episode. Most times they just managed to get the officer off the line somehow, which is still good, but actually invoking change in the character, and I really do like that. Now, that was a lot, but I would love to hear your thoughts on Dear Dad 3. It was a heavy episode of a serious topic, but lots of brevity, and that's something I've discovered a lot with these early seasons of MASH. There's a lot more serious topics being touched on than I remembered. Just sometimes there's a joke that undercuts it. They did not do that in this episode, which I think shows how seriously they took this main topic. They didn't undercut it with a joke at the end. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. Meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the force be with you always.